Since their return to power in August 2021, the Afghan Taliban have gone on an infrastructure spree, building multiple dams and canals on the various rivers that flow down from the mountains in the east. While this should ultimately be good news for ordinary Afghans, who are both extraordinarily poor and water deprived, it's nonetheless triggered a fair bit of upset amongst Afghanistan's neighbours, which has reached a crescendo in recent months. Afghanistan's Central Asian neighbours, for instance, have come out against a new mega canal in the north of the country. And Iran, which has long accused Afghanistan of unfairly restricting water supplies to the southeast, is now angry about another dam that threatens to disrupt flows into its northeast. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the Taliban's so-called hydro hegemony, how it interacts with Iran's pre-existing water crisis, and why things only look likely to get worse. Never miss an episode and always feel in the loop by subscribing and ringing the bell. So to understand this story, you need to know a bit about Central Asia's topography. In short, many of the region's waterways start in or flow through the mountainous areas in eastern Afghanistan, mostly through the mountain range of Hindu Kush. Therefore, many of Afghanistan's neighbours essentially rely on these rivers for their water supplies. The Amu Darya, for instance, one of the largest rivers in the region, runs down from eastern Afghanistan with tributaries running into Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan and Tajikistan. Similarly, both the Helmand and Hari rivers originate in Afghanistan before flowing into eastern Iran, with the Hari then flowing into Turkmenistan. Now, for most of the past few decades, this regional reliance on Afghanistan's rivers hasn't been an issue, in large part because Afghanistan has generally been too unstable to actually build any dams on the various rivers. However, since the Taliban reasserted control over the country after the US's withdrawal in 2021, they've gone on a dam and canal building spree that's provoked some serious anxiety amongst its neighbours. Early this year, for instance, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan expressed concerns about the Taliban's new Kosh-Tepe mega canal, which will apparently divert up to a third of the Amu Darya's flow. Construction is expected to finish in the next couple of years, and the canal is supposed to be 285 kilometers long, 100 meters wide and roughly 10 meters deep, redirecting water from the Amu Darya for irrigation in northern Afghanistan. Initial plans for the canal date back to the 70s, but nothing really happened on it during the 40 or so years of unrest that followed the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979. However, since their return to power in 2021, the canal has become the hallmark project of the Taliban, who like to frame it as proof of what we might call their state capacity. In other words, their ability to do stuff like build big infrastructure projects. Nonetheless, it's provoked some understandable anxiety among their Central Asian neighbours, both because these countries' economies still rely heavily on agriculture, and therefore water supplies, and also because they don't have much faith in the Taliban's construction abilities. Well, the Taliban never admitted it. In 2023, for instance, a wall section of the canal collapsed, creating an artificial lake of more than 30 square kilometers. But while Afghanistan's Central Asian neighbors might be a bit worried about the Taliban's hydro hegemony, Iran is actively furious about it. For context, while the Helmand has long been a point of tension between Iran and Afghanistan, in the past year or so, a new dispute over the Hari has come to the fore. The Helmand dispute dates back really to the 50s, when Afghanistan, then one of the more prosperous countries in the region, started developing hydroelectric dams on the river. Iran got anxious that these dams would mean reduced flows into the Iranian province of Sistan and Balochistan, which relies heavily on agriculture and has a long history of separatism. To resolve these tensions, in March 1973, the two sides signed the Afghan-Iranian Helmand River Water Treaty, which basically guaranteed Iran roughly 10% of the Helmand's flow every year. This treaty has always been contentious, both because it's vaguely worded and because only a few months after it was signed, the Afghan monarchy was deposed via a military coup. Nonetheless, it looked like the treaty was being revived in the 2010s, when the US-backed Afghan government restarted negotiations, but the return of the Taliban has scuppered any chance of progress. Relations have become particularly tense in the last few years, because Afghanistan has been renovating the Kajaki Dam and expanding the Camel Khan Dam on the lower parts of the Helmand. In fact, a brief conflict actually broke out along the Afghanistan-Iran border in 2023 over exactly this issue, but it looked like things had calmed down. That was until earlier this year when the Taliban both began construction on what they called the third phase of the Camel Khan Dam and a new dam on the Hari River called the Pashdam Dam, which came online in August. This sparked an angry reaction from Iran, with foreign ministry officials expressing, quote, strong concern towards what they saw as the Taliban's exploitation of the Hari River, noting that the Hari is one of the main water supplies for Mashhad, the second most populous city in Iran. More generally though, this is all happening in the context of an acute water crisis in Iran. It doesn't get that much attention in the international press, but due to excessive droughts, rising temperatures, and chronic resource mismanagement, Iran has basically run out of water. Reservoirs have fallen to record lows, and early this year the taps actually ran dry in Tehran, with the subsequent uptick in air conditioning triggering an electricity blackout. Things have got so bad that last month Iran's president publicly offered 100 billion tomans, about $1 million, to anyone who could solve the water crisis. And this month even suggested that Iran should move its capital from Tehran to somewhere further south with better water supplies. In this light, you can see why the Iranians might be getting anxious about the Taliban imposing further restrictions on their water supplies. So what happens next? Well, while there's little risk of a full-scale conflict in the immediate future, all of the trend lines are heading in the wrong direction. Every country in Central Asia already struggles with water scarcity to some degree, and climate change and population growth will only exacerbate this problem in the future. Moreover, despite outreach from Iran and Uzbekistan, the Taliban has so far shown basically zero interest in negotiations, insisting that its dam and canal building projects are ultimately domestic affairs. This is sort of unsurprising. The Taliban aren't exactly renowned for their international diplomacy, and to be fair to them, Afghanistan is an incredibly poor country in dire need of both more water and better infrastructure. This is presumably one of the reasons that Afghanistan's neighbours have reluctantly taken steps to normalise diplomatic relations with the Taliban in recent years. The region is facing various issues, not just water scarcity, and ultimately the only way to solve them is to somehow get the Taliban to play ball. Anyway, as you'd expect, this story about Afghanistan's water diplomacy is constantly changing and updating as more and more outlets start reporting on it. Right now, there are 93 sources reporting on this issue, with most of the coverage coming from the right. If we dive a bit deeper, we can see that the left is focusing on the impact of Afghanistan's water crisis on minorities in the country, while the right focuses more on the geopolitical implications. This type of analysis is why Ground News has been my favourite way to stay up to date with the news since 2023, so I want to thank them for sponsoring this video. It's no secret by this point just how much we're fans of Ground News. They've been long-time supporters of this channel and independent news media at large. And that's because their app and website makes it easier to navigate the news. Ground News gathers thousands of articles worldwide in one place, so that you can easily compare how different outlets cover the same story. Each story comes with a visual breakdown on political bias, factuality, and who owns these sources. And it's not just me. Ground News has even been recognised by the Nobel Peace Center for its impact on media literacy. And speaking of bias, their brilliant blind spot feed allows you to fully expand your media bias and find stories that are disproportionately being covered by one side of the political spectrum or the other. After all, it's important to know the full story, and Ground News ensures you always will. If you're curious and committed to understanding what's really going on in the world, like we are, Ground News is the tool you've been looking for. And that's why we partner with them to give TLDR viewers 40% off their unlimited Vantage plan. You can subscribe through the link in the description, that's ground.news/TLDR, or by scanning the QR code on screen. And by subscribing, you're also supporting an independent news platform that's working to make the media landscape more transparent and balanced.